Welcome to the 1940s. See, it's not just any book club off the books, where we primarily talk about movies, but every once in a while we'll mix in something else. This time,
Wheel Devil. Yeah.
this time we're talking about Double Indemnity, the film
Yeah.
adaptation, since we're doing Noir month.
Or Raymond Chandler month,
Or Raymond Chandler month, if you want to consider it that, because
more specific.
yeah,
He wrote the screenplay for this.
we ended up doing a lot of Raymond Chandler this month, which is the voice of noir, so pretty much, right?
Yeah, basically. He was the trailblazer, but we're not talking about his books just yet. We're not talking about, Philip Marlowe or any of his other characters. Now we're talking about, I think, his one movie that he ever co-written, aside from a random Hitchcock movie that he wrote later on. Double Indemnity, 1944, directed by Billy Wilder and co-written with Raymond
Yeah.
Chandler.
Well, and I think
Um,
the other interesting thing about it is it's a work that isn't really it's not a detective in a city which is coming down. It's about a insurance salesman. Yeah, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting that this is the first thing we're talking about for Noir Month, and it's different from the stereotype.
Yeah. But I think this was one of the films, I think probably the film that really cemented a lot of the tropes associated with noir. I mean, just because it lacks the detective, investigating a murder or a crime or something like that. This does follow a lot of the tropes associated with noir. The femme fatale, the unwitting man that gets duped by said femme fatale to commit a crime that he's probably out of his league for. And I guess if we're going in movie form, there's the witty dialogue that goes back and forth. There's the German expressionism. Basically, this movie is probably the prototype for film noir. So, yeah. And I did actually read the book because it was I think it was part of a serial. So, basically, it took me around an hour to read, which welcome pace, change of pace. And if I had to compare it to the movie, the book definitely does not does not favor well when compared to the movie, because even the author James L. Cain agrees that all the changes that they made in the movie were for the better.
This is one of the few times that you can say the movie was better than the book. 100%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically, and the author agrees too.
Okay.
Yeah, it adheres very closely to the book, but it just adds just a bit more. Where I think it really changes the story or the way it's told. I
And
don't know if you want to get into plot summary now, or sorry.
I was just gonna say, stylistically too, it feels like movies like this make it feel like noir was made for film. I finished my book first before watching this, which I'll talk about next week. But I finished the book first, and then I watched this movie, and obviously this is supposed to be one of, if not the best film, the noir film. So maybe hard to compare, but this movie's I don't know, between this and the few other noir films I've seen, it feels like, as much as the trailblazers were writing it in books, the genre is almost made for the silver screen in a way, just with the style, how it all fits together so perfectly.
Oh yeah, you'll definitely be right. Because yeah, many of the iconic films from this area, just I don't think many people could name a popular or a well acclaimed noir novel, because they usually had a bad association with it just being very pulpy. Because Raymond Chandler during his time, we'll get to more about Raymond Chandler in a later episode. Um, they were just considered very just pulpy, not very high class, even though in my opinion, they are worthy of being mentioned in the same category at least. Um, but Now, but like in film, it was always respected. It always got the accolades. It always got the awards, or at least nominated for awards. So in my opinion, that's where I stand.
Yeah. Well, and we'll talk more about this next week, I'm sure. But I think pulpy stuff has, um, in in kind of the more modern times, has gotten almost a so I feel like people have taken another look at it and realized
Mhm.
the artistic value of
Yeah,
everything that was considered pulp back in the day.
yeah. We're allowed to have fun once in a while,
Yeah.
okay?
Right, 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 right.
Okay. All right. Uh, plot summary. So we have a character named Walter Neff who we start off the film. He's wounded. He's driving somewhere, and he goes into this insurance building, and he's got shot. He goes up an elevator, and the elevator person asks him, "Yo, what happened?" And I was like, "I, you'll learn later." And he basically just records on dictaphone and goes like, "All right, I committed a crime." So he goes into a house and meets Phyllis Dietrichson, who in the book was named something entirely different. Phyllis Nerdlinger. They changed it for very obvious reasons because that name is pretty lame. Sorry, people that are named that. So so basically, he goes to the house and talks about automobile insurance. She brings up like, "Hey, I can get some life insurance on my husband. He doesn't have to know." And immediately, that just sounds very suspicious. And Walter Neff is like, "You're trying to kill your husband, but that's okay because I want to go do it with you." Because immediately Phyllis just starts flirting with him, and for some reason he just goes along with it. Goes like, "All right." And he basically one ups her and goes like, "You're gonna murder a husband? No, you're gonna do it all wrong. What you really wanna do is maximize it. You wanna do the double indemnity clause, which means it's a very unusual circumstance and you get double the money. 1,000,000 for me, 1,000,000 for you." You know, uh, I don't know if this was real policy. This was actually based on a real murder, which we'll get on later on. Um, but yeah, so basically they do some scheming and they plan it out very meticulously. They murder the husband in the car, and then they place the body in the tracks. Not after um, Walter Neff imitates him with crutches because he broke his foot right before. So after this all happens, they find the body. The insurance president says this was a suicide, but Keys, his coworker, says no, no, it's not because why would he just jump off a train at the back of a train that's going like a couple miles per hour? That doesn't make any sense. And, he also says he didn't really claim any insurance, and he dies right after. Interesting. So, eventually, like, there's some foul play going on. Phyllis keeps on trying to visit him, and because she's so down bad for him for some reason. I don't know why. It they you could sense that these people are not very sane, but that's what makes it even better. And then we start to realize, oh man, Phyllis had a daughter or a stepdaughter named Lola, who meets up with Neff and just gives Neff just some advice, going, "Hey, I think that Phyllis killed my father because she was a nurse, and now she also killed my father, her first her first wife or something like that, when she was a nurse because she would poison them, and then they never found out about it. And then later on, Keyes finds another witness who was on the train, and then says it was not Dickerson that was on the train. Um, and then Neff starts to get freaking out. He starts saying, "Hey, Phyllis, stop trying to see me. Start lying low." But then Neff starts to learn that Nino, Lola's boyfriend, has been visiting Phyllis every night. So he kind of adds the two and two together and goes like, "Oh, I think Phyllis is about to kill Lola." Um, Neff tells Phyllis that he knows about her and Nino, and he threatens to kill Phyllis. And I think Neff shoots Phyllis, and then Phyllis shoots Neff back, and it could have been one more shot, but he goes like, "Wow, I don't want to kill you," but too late because Neff shoots right back, I think. And yeah, and then Nino comes to the house. Neff warns him, "Don't go inside. Don't you dare do that." Neff drives to the office, and then bam, we go full circle because Keys comes in and goes, "Yeah, buddy, you're screwed." And well, there goes that plan.
Yeah, And it honestly, it almost seemed to me like he was gonna at least let him leave the building if he could make it outside, but then he did not.
Yeah.
He didn't make it. He falls before even getting out to the street.
He says "I love you" at the end too, right? It's like a full closure on the running gag or
Yeah,
running bit.
yeah. I did
Kind of
actually
sweet.
look
Maybe
up.
he'll.
I did actually look up double indemnity clauses while you were talking. And funnily enough, I found something that says people with dangerous jobs such as heavy construction, which is what
Oh,
Phyllis's husband worked in, are not generally eligible for multiple indemnity coverage.
was it was that before or after this movie?
I don't know. It's not. It doesn't say, but I just think that's funny.
The entire premise is just gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I have read the book. And again, I think the movie is a little bit better. They put all the narration, a lot of the witty narration, that because it was told in first person, into some of the dialogue, which I found really neat. I'm just gonna list some differences. I'm not gonna get too much detail, but I will say Filipinos get mentioned in this book a lot until I was really hyped. I'm like, yo, Filipinos are here. But then I realized, oh, Filipinos are mentioned. That's not considering the status, probably not the best representation I got there. Um, yeah, because they didn't even mention him by name. It's just Filipino over and over again. I'm like, oh. But the main difference is how the book really presented its plot because it doesn't have that framing device with Neff like speaking and like having a foregone conclusion. Basically, from I think almost page one, Phyllis and Neff meet, and it's just they instantly hit it off, and almost immediately just start to plan the murder, behind the back of the husband, which I don't know. It's less compelling in the book because you can't really find the chemistry together. And in the movie, there's more of an emphasis between Neff and Keys. Keys being played by a legendary actor, which we'll mention later, Edward G. Robinson. Um, so there's a lot more fleshed out because before in the book, he's just kind of mentioned offhand. He's kind of introduced pretty late. Here he's introduced pretty early, and there's some camaraderie between the two, which I thought was a very nice touch. And the ending is where it gets really different because basically at the end Neff basically gets a get out of jail free card and meets up with Phyllis at the end. No, no, no. I forgot what the exact details were. I should have written this down a little bit more. But basically, he is able to get to the elevator, I guess. Oh, because he was not shot, actually. He was able to get to the elevator and he goes with Phyllis and they are heading to Mexico trying to flee, even though that they know that people are chasing them. And while they're on the boat, Phyllis knows that it's basically it's over. She looks down into the water and she sees a bunch of shark infested waters, and she says, "I'm gonna jump." And the narrator, Neff also jumps, and
Very,
that's the
very
ending.
pulpy. Very pulpy. Oh my god.
Yeah, yeah.
Crazy.
That that's all that I have to say about the differences. It adheres pretty closely, but the movie I think tells it better. But I love this movie. I'll leave it up to you, Pierce, to see if you have anything you want to say.
Um, no, I mean, like it's not like there's not a terrible amount to analyze in the movie.
It's very plot
It's
based.
extremely well plotted, well written, well put together. Um, I I think the only thing that even gave me pause during the movie is Phyllis's character. She's kind of an insane person, and like beyond just being a femme fatale, she's like she's kind of an insane person. Like I don't know how else to describe it. It I don't know. It didn't really I
You can
it
critique the
it felt
canon.
all right. Okay, it felt like to me. It felt like she was like a caricature of like a crazy woman from the like
Okay.
from the feelings of that time period. a little
Okay.
bit.
Oh,
Do you know what I mean?
yeah, I see what you mean. Because yeah,
Like a crazy, "Oh, I'm gonna kill my husband." She's like overly emotional in that last scene where they like shoot at each other. She's like
giving each other kisses like that, just
right,
shooting.
right. She's her emotions in different scenes in the movie like go all over the place. She feels like a caricature of the view of women at that time, in my
That is a very
opinion.
interesting perspective.
Yeah.
Hmm. I wouldn't go as far to say it's a bit misogynistic like that, but yeah, now that you mentioned it, probably the main female characters in this film, we got 2. We got Phyllis, who's crazy, and then we got Lola, who, is,
Kind
for
of a
lack of a better word, she's
naive,
naive,
like,
naive.
young
There we go.
girl. Yeah, yeah.
Who was also
I wouldn't say it's like, misogynistic to the point of, like, aggressively misogynistic, but it did give
mhm,
me pause, is what
mhm.
how I would say it, you know?
Yeah, now that you mention it, Lola, because I'm just realizing, 1, she's not a very good actor in that movie. I'm just like, this is my 3rd time watching the movie, and I just noticed, wow, sh she stands out as kinda not the best actor right now. Um, 2, her character kinda gets involved with Neff, goes like, "Oh, you're involved? You're the last person to talk to my dad? Well, looks like I'm going to ride in a car with you and take free rides this entire time." But
Yeah.
I still love this movie.
No, it's yeah, it's extremely well plotted, and the reason you're there is really well put together. So like
Yeah.
even this criticism doesn't really take away from the
Yeah.
movie all that much in again in my opinion.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it was something that gave me pause that I felt the need to mention.
Yeah. I mean, okay. The reason why I really love this movie is 1, because of the witty dialogue. Because I knew this movie would be a kind of like an all-time favorite once you I think Neff's and Phyllis's first encounter, where they basically this movie was made during the Hays Code. And the Hays
Mhm.
Code was this was in its prime, because basically the Hays Code was this strict set of codes that all pictures had to follow. And they were very strict. All the bad guys had to lose. There's a long list of features, but what Noir was very known for was the fact that it could tell these very grim, dark stories, and still be able to um, under these guidelines. Because America after World War II, they were very disillusioned with everything that was going on. They were exposed to the horrors of war, and now they get to make films that reflect that under these rules. Um, but I think it is very interesting how it sometimes it really works to its benefits because, placing restrictions sometimes brings out some creativity. Like in this
Right.
case where in the book, committing a double suicide by jumping into a den of sharks, that was not allowed by the Hays Code because 1, you can show disposing of bodies, so that seems kinda cut from the book, when translating into the film, and 2, they had to pay justice rather than kind of escaping it, so essentially, they couldn't even have them, sail away, they just had to, the compromise was them mortally wounding each other, and I think that works way better, but obviously the Hays Code was very restrictive, not necessarily great to put censorship on your art. Um, some other things that they implied rather than showed, was that Phyllis and Neff were obviously having an affair, but they couldn't imply that they were sleeping together. So, there was one scene where they, implied it with a rug that was kind of out of place. So, I think in the scene, Neff just, like, kicks it. So, essentially, that's supposed to imply they were doing it on the ground. They were doing it all over on the ceiling, on the walls. Wild.
Crazy. Yeah.
Crazy. Um, but do you have anything else to say about, the characters in general?
Uh, I Well, so I guess do you have, because I mentioned how I thought it was interesting that this doesn't fit in exactly with the kind of plot you would
Hmm.
expect from a noir film. Um, are there any specific, like, because I recognize that that Neff does have some things about him, like the
Hmm.
witty dialogue that fit into the tropes of like the main character of these kinds of stories. But are there
Hmm.
any other specific tropes that you would probably be better able to put into words that he fits into as like the main character of a noir, a
Well,
piece of noir fiction?
he gets involved in crime, is probably the biggest one. Not necessarily the fact that like you have to be a detective for it to be considered a film noir. Um, it's more about the fact that he gets roped in and he is basically the architect of his own demise because he's just there's complication after complication. Um, witty dialogue. Should be other stuff that I can think of, but mainly those 2, and I think Billy Wilder and Chandler both wisely kind of obfuscate any sense of, like, psychological insight into them, because you're not supposed to know much about these characters, you're supposed to get really wrapped up in the plot, so I think you can kind of project what you think they're thinking, or whatever. So I think that's another part of it. I don't have anything else to say about his character and how he fits into war in general. But my question to you is
He's got
that,
a he's sorry, he's got the one liner. He's got
uh,
he's got some one liners. He says baby about a
a
million
lot
times.
take a shot every time he says "baby," and you'll die
And
by
you'll
the 30-minute mark.
die. Yeah. Oh, I guess he's an anti-hero, right?
Yeah.
A lot of noir main characters are anti-heroic, I guess, is probably a big one that we haven't mentioned yet.
Yeah, you were literally not allowed to get away with anything if you were the anti-hero, so,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, but my question to you is that, do you think that Neff is he equally as crazy, or is he just like a weak, spineless man that's just going along with things?
Um I don't know, cuz he's either lying to himself before he tries to commit fraud, because he seems to be very like, "Oh, I'm on the straight and narrow," like
Mhm,
he goes to her house and she's talking about the insurance, the life insurance,
mhm.
and he's like, "Oh, I see. I know what you're doing. I'm on to you. I know what you're doing." Or he's lying to himself after he tries to you know go
Yeah.
with Phyllis, um because I think he's either good or bad. I don't think. I mean, I guess you could say like his love for Phyllis makes him want to run away with her, and this is the best way he knows how. But like,
Yeah.
why wouldn't you just run away with her? Why do you have to why do you have to commit fraud to do it? Um, Commit fraud and murder. Actually, now that I think about it,
Yeah, that's kind
um,
of the bigger one here.
yeah. It's I don't know. I I think maybe the fact that he figures out that he's gonna get double crossed, and then he loses the girl, and then he immediately goes to turn himself in. Maybe he is just spineless
Well,
because
I
he.
think
Mhm.
that decision at the end to turn himself in, was probably the one noble thing he did. He grew a
Yeah.
spine at the end, character development, because he realized, "Oh, man, he's gonna kill Lola and do the same thing again." Because I think he also assumed that, Phyllis would kill him next
Mhm.
and run away with Nino.
Right.
I believe that was the case. So, I think it was active self-preservation, but also just, like, writing everything. Just, like, basically righting his wrongs as much as he could, even though he did murder someone and kinda claim insurance. Yeah.
That guy did not seem to be enjoying life very much anyways. I'm not saying it
No.
was right. I'm just saying he seemed kind of miserable. Like
Yeah.
Which I'm sure
Yeah,
I'm sure is part of the point because we're supposed to still feel for this character who murders that guy. So I'm sure he's made to be miserable so that we don't
yeah,
feel for him as much when he
yeah.
gets murdered.
I don't know if you recognize the actor, Fred MacMurray. You remember him from a previous movie we did together? Also, Billy Wilder.
No? What?
Oh, The Apartment. Ooh,
Oh, is that really
yeah,
that's really him?
yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Um, and the reason why this is also is it him? Hold on, I gotta look this up again. I thought it was him. Give me a second. Did I lie to you? Oh yeah,
No, you
it is
didn't.
him.
That's
Okay,
right.
okay, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. There you go. The reason why this is actually significant, is the fact that he is known to do like family movies. Like he was known at least during the day, um, to do family movies. I think the two Billy Wilder movies that he did were the exceptions, or one of the few exceptions that he did. I think he did like the Shaggy Dog or something as well. Like basically all those family movies that we never watched. Obviously, we're not that old, but
The
like
Shaggy Dog. You mean the
dog,
one that was
yeah.
remade with like Tim Allen in the mid 2000s or something?
I guess so. Yeah, I remember. Yeah,
You don't remember the movie where Tim Allen turns
I
into the Shaggy Dog?
should review it. I do remember. I know what you're talking about. I've never seen it, but I've seen that movie when it was like playing in elementary school.
Mm.
Good times. Where were we? Fred MacMurray. Yeah, this was a bit of subversion. I don't know if he cemented himself as a family entertainer, but um, you would never have guessed it from this movie, because he plays a murderous man, who is very down bad. Um, but Um, I think probably the most, famous actor, at least of this day, you probably wouldn't know him as the layperson, now, but Edward G. Robinson, who plays Walter Key or who plays Keyes. I don't know his first name. Who, Billy Wilder, I know that you're a good man, you're a great director, but man, you could have blocked it better because he looks really short in every single scene. And guess what? I am the same exact height as he is. And that's only because every single actor that he's around is like 6 feet or just about. And every time I'm like, damn. Because like, what
Yeah,
is it?
weren't
Fred MacMurray was
didn't you have to in order to be like a big name in early Hollywood, didn't you have to like most either have to be like super talented or like tall
really tall.
because they wanted you to be like a love interest, right? They wanted you to be like
If you're a
super
leading
tall.
man,
Yeah, leading. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Um, Sometimes, I don't know if he was, like, the one exception because he was actually very well known, like, in the early 1930s, during the
Mm.
pre-code era. He was known for playing gangsters. He played Little Caesar,
I see it. I see it. I he looks
like a gangster.
like Italian, like an Italian gangster. He does a little bit.
Okay.
As
Yep.
a an early film version of an Italian gangster.
Yeah.
He's no Tony Soprano to be sure. But
Yeah. Uh, and a lot of, his mannerisms, he has a very distinct nasally voice, which, has been replicated a lot to mimic people from the 1940s to go, "See? See?" Am I doing that right?
yeah, that one.
Uh Yeah, a lot of, like, Chief Wiggum from The Simpsons, that's him. If you're going Looney Tunes and Bugs Bunny wants to impersonate you, he'll probably do something like that. So, and also fun fact, he can speak 7 languages and collective fine art. Ain't that cool? Also, he was very, very, very outspoken against Nazism. So was Billy Wilder, who grew up in Europe and, experienced the Nazis firsthand, and was able to flee just before that happened. So, what a guy. What a guy. Uh, yeah. I was he I think he was also, like, blacklisted from Hollywood because he was, like, speaking out against HUAC and all that stuff. Basically, he's an actor I respect. Right side of history. Let's go.
Yeah.
Short King, definitely.
He was in Soylent Green, which I've heard of but not
I mean,
seen.
I just know the one quote, which is a spoiler. I don't know
Okay.
why they made that. Yeah, but yeah. So now that we talked about all the characters, I guess we could talk about the writing, which we probably should have started with, but who cares? This podcast is all about just flowing from my mind, and I speak really fast, so sometimes my
I mean,
thoughts don't even catch up.
I would say we've already talked a little bit about the writing because of the avoidance of the Hays Code in adapting and
Yeah,
stuff. That's probably the most major thing of note
yeah,
about it. Um,
yeah. And talked about the book differences.
mhm.
What I really just love about the story itself is the fact that, like, it is a good case, a good example of, like, cause and reaction, basically, therefore and but. Every single scene and every single action the characters take has an equal reaction, or everything that goes wrong goes subtly wrong, even though it doesn't, like, emphasize how wrong it's gonna be. Um, like, for example, when, Neff is talking on the phone and he's talking to Phyllis, and Phyllis is like, "It's very urgent, I can't hang up right now," and then Keys is in the room, and then he has to speak in code, and then, Keys Neff tells Keys, like, "You can leave the room," and then Keys is like, "Nah, I'll stay, just tell them to not take too long."
Yeah,
It's almost like
I sorry.
Hitchcockian. No, yeah,
Mhm.
sorry, it's Hitchcockian.
Yeah. I read something before we started that compared the version of Keys in the film almost to Philip Marlowe to Raymond
Oh,
Chandler's character because obviously he was the one changing stuff from the
yeah,
original book, writing the screenplay and everything.
yeah.
And I don't remember if you mentioned this, but in the book that Keys is kind of a clueless colleague, and he almost gets
Mhm.
turned into this antagonist who's very clever, and kind of figures out what's going on, um, just based on honestly not a ton of information. He figures it out.
He's like Sherlock, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Which
I
is
think
kind of it's kind of a trope I could excuse because it's
yeah,
the way that some of these stories go. They figure it out because they're so smart. They know.
yeah. Well, in the movie, I think I still always believe it, like, that he's actually naturally coming to these conclusions
Mhm.
because, like, he gets the theory basically almost right. It's almost there, and that's what increases the tension because he always gets, like, one detail wrong. And it's really clever, as to how they do it, because I watched this is my first time watching the movie without any subtitles because, if you're watching a dialogue-based movie, you gotta have the subs on, to really appreciate it. And here I was able to, like, really appreciate how, like, Billy Wilder was able to, like, block these actors and make sure that because they weren't able to cut a lot back then, so it was basically like a film play. Um Basically, like the scene where, Keyes brings in the key witness that was on the train, and, like, Walter Neff has to, like, hide his face. I was on the edge of my seat. I've seen this film 3 times, and I still didn't know how it was gonna go down because he keeps on trying to hide his face. You could see on the actor's face that, like, he kinda recognizes him, kinda doesn't, and, like, you are waiting for that pin to drop, like, him to suddenly make the connection, but he doesn't. Which I just think it's great. There's also that scene in the elevator, or a little bit past the elevator, when Phyllis says, "I'm gonna come up," and then Keys is also gonna come up, and you're just waiting, like, with all this tension. Is Phyllis gonna come in at the exact same moment that Keys walks out? Who knows? It's great.
Yeah.
Quality writing. Any moments that, like, stand out to you as, like, stand out?
Honestly, yeah, honestly, I mentioned kind of the ending before where it seems like he's almost gonna let him like go, or at least let him get a head start before he calls anybody. But then he doesn't even make it out to the street. Um, I really like that whole ending scene. It's
Mm,
like it's a meeting between colleagues and almost friends. They've been extremely
mhm.
friendly and
Ye
trusted each other through the film,
yeah.
and
And Keys,
we get to this end,
um
and Keys has kind of figured out that something's going on, and now
mhm.
it's obvious. Like this, why
Yeah,
Neff is in his office, like confessing everything into a
yeah.
microphone.
And I think a little
Um,
bit before that scene, Neff is, like, overhears people, like, saying, "Yeah, it's totally Neff," and Key's like, "No, he's a good man. It can't be possibly him." I'm like, "Oh,
yeah, right,
complications."
right. So I thought That scene, honestly, even to the very end, had me on the edge of my seat because it's so like, okay, what is he gonna do? Like they clearly really like each other. Like they're really good friend. They're very friendly with one
Mhm,
another. And but Neff is or Keys is clearly like he's extremely good at his job and he's proud of that. So what is he gonna do? Like what is the situation gonna call for? Is he gonna let him go?
mhm.
Um, and again, to me, it almost feels like he would have if Neff could actually make it to his car, but he doesn't. He doesn't make it there.
Mm. Who lights a
It-
cigarette for him though?
yeah, and he even says like, you're not gonna make it to Mexico, buddy. Like you're not making it." But I don't know. It feels to me like he's gonna let him go, and maybe I'm wrong, or maybe that's up for debate. But
Mhm.
that's what it seemed like to me.
Well, actually, there was a cut ending to this film. I don't know if you're well aware of that. It's lost footage now, but basically, at the end, b- it shows that the fact that Neff is going into the gas chamber and Keys watches, which would be very, very unnecessary to watch, in my opinion. Chandler was very adamant about keeping it in, but I think the producer really wanted to cut, and for a good reason, because that would have been really just it ended at a very perfect place. You don't need
Yeah,
to add anything else to that.
right. It's needless. You kind of get you understand the tragedy just from how it ends. You don't need the extra like twist of the knife as he like watches his
Yeah,
friend go into the gas chamber.
yeah. In my opinion, the ending is just like perfect where it ends.
Yeah.
So why ruin a good thing?
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and then I also just I just love the narration because narration is, in films is a very hard thing to do, but it adds context to everything that is not already able to be conveyed through dialogue. And I really like that it spoils the ending, so you're kind of wondering, oh, you, I mean, you're wondering what happens next, but you're
Yeah.
kind of knowing how it happens, how we got there, and every kind of small victory they have is kind of laden with like tragedy.
Hmm. I yeah, I definitely agree. It's a very good use of the of that like beginning of the end almost trope where you start with
Yeah,
where it ends up, and then
yeah,
it's all about how do we get there?
yeah,
What pitfalls, or even as they're like, I don't know, the when they're actually pulling off the crime, I'm like, how does this fail? Like this seems so like there's some problems, but it feels pretty foolproof almost, and then
yeah.
it all falls apart, and you know it's all gonna fall apart, but it's just how.
Yeah. Um, yeah, especially with the ending in mind.
Mhm.
It works, and I think that's how most, if not all tragedies were like that back then. And I think it's really just not an American thing, but like, um, I think it is very commonplace in other countries just to like literally spoil the ending, and then they will just continue on from the beginning. Because I know Romeo and Juliet does that very famously. And for some reason, I heard the anime, Sailor Moon will literally just start off with, "All right, here are some things that happen in the episode, and here's the episode now." I don't know why that. I mean, it's a different way of storytelling, but it's very interesting. You're recapping the events of the episode before you actually watch the episode. I've
Yeah.
not watched Sailor Moon. I just heard this was the case. Full disclosure.
Yeah, I mean, lots of stuff does it. Amadeus, for instance, kind of does it. That's funny to us because I was in the middle of watching Amadeus when I remembered we had to record.
He's watching the
um,
greatest movie of all time. Just saying.
one of, yeah,
Oh,
for
yeah,
sure.
one of
I haven't
yeah
finished it
that
yet. I don't feel I'm in a position to say it. I haven't finished it, so. But
well that
I
movie
can
won.
tell it's going up there for
Uh,
sure.
yeah. Well, that movie won Best Picture, but do you know how this film fared at the Oscars?
I saw when I was reading stuff about it. They got 7 nominations and lost all 7 of them. Um,
Yeah, it lost. So first, it lost Best Sound to a movie called Wilson. You know, it's a biography about Woodrow Wilson. You know, the guy that screened Birth of a Nation at the White House. That guy was
Oh,
it? Yeah,
brother. Oh, brother.
yeah, the guy that reintroduced federal segregation. That guy. What a great movie to win an Oscar. Hooray. Um, Best music, which okay, to be honest, I don't really remember the music from this movie that well, but
It's yeah, it's not super memorable. It was good, but not like crazy
you know,
memorable.
it's not like Star Wars or anything.
Yeah,
It lost to a movie
serviceable,
called Since You Went Away. I've
serviceable,
never heard of it.
serviceable.
Yeah, probably serviceable. I mean, okay, honestly, I'll probably give it here. Since It Went Away. Never heard of it. It's an epic drama film from 1944. I'm reading the Wikipedia page right now. It's something. Yes, I'll give you that. Academy Awards. Cinematography to Laura, which that movie is kind of it's all right, but I think probably the biggest insult is losing Best Picture to Going My Way, which is a musical comedy drama starring Bing Crosby, which I don't know. No one talks about the movie now. I'm not opposed to musicals and comedies winning Best Picture because Chicago won, and I have no objections towards that. I don't know if that's a hot take or not, but I love Chicago. But I don't know. This movie is still one of my all-time favorites.
The only thing on here that I could probably give it to the Academy for just by name recognition alone is Best Actress for Ingrid Bergman
Yes.
over
Yeah.
over the actress who played Phyllis. It's
Yeah.
it's I mean it's Ingrid Bergman, like
Yeah.
I as a person who's
See,
really
seen one
starting
movie
to
with
get
her.
really starting to get into film like fairly recently compared to how long film has been a
Mhm.
thing for. Um, I know who Ingrid Bergman is, so like
Yeah.
just on name recognition alone, that's the only one that I could be like, oh, maybe. The rest of these,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Um. So apparently, Billy Wilder went into the Academy Awards going like, "I'm gonna sweep the Academy Awards. I'm gonna win all these Oscars." And once he saw that, like, he was not gonna win anything and was gonna be losing to the big hit that was Going My Way, um, he got really pissed. And apparently, when McCary, the person who directed the movie, was named Best Director, he put his foot in front of the guy and tripped him. So
Oh my god.
what a guy. Um, and after the ceremony, Will Wilder yelled so everyone can hear, "What the hell does the Academy Award mean? For God's sake! After all, Louise Rayner won it 2 times. Louise Rayner, what did she win for? I don't know. I should have looked this up. But apparently, you know, maybe not the most deserving one. I guess. What a guy. Yeah. Um,
I mean, I feel like history has kind of as much as he seems
you
like
shouldn't do that.
kind of a dick for that. Um, as much as he seems like kind of a jerk for that one, I feel like history has been kind to him for this. Like this is considered one of the best movies of all time, and I had never heard of Going My Way before before looking into this movie and its reception.
And you're never gonna watch that movie
Probably
in your
not.
lifetime.
Probably
No.
not. Nope.
Yeah. Um, the other small little tidbits, I'm pretty sure you may be aware of, Wilder and Chandler behind the scenes. They've really butted heads a lot during this. They're both really well known for writing great dialogue, which I wholeheartedly agree with because, watching this movie, I wasn't sure that was a Wilder line. No, that was a Chandler line because, like, both really popped off. And I think it was Chandler who basically was like, "Hey, um, Kane's dialogue won't really translate well to film," and Wilder had full trust into it, as to like it translating to film very well. But after actually hearing it out, he they eventually compromised, they stopped butting heads, and worked. And I think it was, I think Wilder joked that it was the first time a screenwriter was able to humble the director. So, they never spoke fondly of each other again, and they never worked with each other again. Again, Chandler never worked on another movie except for Strangers on a Train with Alfred Hitchcock, I believe. Um, just completely random, but yeah, this was basically a job that Chandler took because his wife was sick and he wanted to have some money in his pocket. Um, and he, even though this might have just been a routine job for him, he came out on top and made a masterpiece.
I hate to burst your bubble, but he has
Oh,
11 writing credits on Letterboxd.
11?
Yeah.
Damn. Or
In fact, he
well,
has one 2 years later for the Blue Dahlia.
oh, that was another Noir film based on the Blue Dahlia murders, I think, that were happening around that era. Never mind, I spread misinformation. If you come to Not Judging the Book Club for news, you'll sorely be mistaken. Um, y okay. Completely disregard
It's
everything I
yeah,
said.
it's fine, it's fine, it's not because your point about, in fact, he has a writing credit the very same year for And Now Tomorrow, but, your point about them butting heads still stands, just not him not doing any more movies.
Okay. Whoops. Ah, another tidbit about this movie, was the fact that, the wig. I think I said this before to you in we were talking about the movie beforehand, recording. Um, I never had problems with the wig up until this watch where Phyllis's wig kinda looks bad, and everyone else agreed. The public agreed, I think studio heads agreed, but Wilder wanted it to stay because it was like, supposed to show that she's all phony, but, he realized, yeah, it looks pretty bad. So, but it was too late because it was a weekend and he couldn't really change it, so he just kinda rolled with it.
You would just have to re-record the whole the whole week of filming.
Yeah, and the thing is, that, it was shot on film, so it wasn't like digital where you can just go, "Oop, alright, delete." No, film was very expensive back then, so,
Right, yeah, for
oh,
sure.
not the best thing to do. I think they compared her to George Washington, so there you go. Um, and yeah, I got nothing else to say. I mean, we know that it is the one thing about, oh, wait a second, what am I talking about? This is the only time that we've ever seen Raymond Chandler on screen, like, in the flesh, like, basically, there's very little footage of him. There's no film interviews or no television interviews, and I don't think he's recorded, like, 2 audio interviews, or very few of them, but there is a 1-second scene where, basically Fred MacMurray walks by. It's very inconsequential, but it's the only known recorded footage of Raymond Chandler on screen. Wild. And that kinda reminds me of, who oh my god, who was the actor that was on The Simpsons? I he wrote,
There's been lots
Inherent
of
Vice.
actors on The
Yeah,
Simpsons.
yeah,
He wrote Inherent Vice?
Oh, no, 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 like, the author that wrote Inherent Vice.
Oh, Pynchon,
Pynchon. Yeah,
Pynchon.
okay. My little fun fact is that Pynchon, there's no known pictures of him, and there's no known, um, audio recordings of him, but he decided one day, that he wanted to cameo on The Simpsons, and that's the only known voice recording of him. So, exclusive authors, keep doing your thing. Keep on surprising us like this. That's
It's
all I gotta say.
I for some reason, my mind immediately went to the Paul Thomas Anderson movie, and I was like, it was probably Paul Thomas Anderson. Like, I was like, because he writes most of his own movies, right?
Um, I think so. He wrote Boogie Nights Heartache. He, uh,
Nah, not
kind of adapted. Okay.
this is kind of a side note, but that's where my mind went immediately. It went to the movie, not to the not to the book. Because we're talking about movies. All right. I mean, do you have anything else to say about
No,
it?
I don't. I mean, I still really love the movie. I love Billy Wilder. I think he is probably the writer I would most emulate because he's written probably the most films, directed the most films that would be considered my all-time favorites. This being one of them, other being Some Like It Hot, the other being The Apartment, the other being Ace in the Hole. He's written many 10 out of 10s in my opinion. So
Mhm.
personal favorites, actually, not just like it's a classic. Give it a 10. No, no, personal favorites.
Yeah, I mean, I I really enjoyed it. I would heavily recommend it for anyone who's looking to like it's clearly a classic for a reason. Um I would say personal enjoyment wise, even for Billy Wilder, I liked it. I'm not saying like I didn't like it.
Okay, yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
saying if I was gonna watch a Billy Wilder film of the two that I've seen, I would rather watch The Apartment. But it's still good, and it's good to check out for film history, if nothing else. Noir is
Mhm.
a classic genre, and this is like the staple of the genre. So,
Yeah.
um, definitely worth checking out for all of the above reasons. And if you like noir, right, it's good to see. Um,
Mhm.
if you're exploring the genre and find you like it,
Yeah, and if you like noir, you can also join us for next week's episode, especially if you like Raymond Chandler, because that's the guy we're doing
where
our little episode on.
we're gonna talk about some Raymond Chandler little dime store novels. Um, in The Big Sleep and what was yours?
The High Window? The
The
High
High
Window.
Window. Right. Yeah, join us next week for that. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave a like, rating, subscribe, follow, whatever's in whatever platform. We appreciate it.
Especially YouTube now.
Especially YouTube. Yes, there's going to be more content on YouTube coming in the summer, and then it'll continue. But we're going to start doing more content in the summer besides just our normal episodes. And you can find us on Twitter or TikTok, which just got maybe banned today at not just any pod. Um, and yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, I think so. Goodbye, Prometheus. See?
See? Okay.